Are you ready? Yes, Mrs. Verhoeven, we're so excited and ready. Woo! Okay. So you do need to know the properties, okay? If you haven't looked over those for a while and you don't remember them, go back to your notes, right? This was 1, 2 at the very beginning, all the properties that we talked through. So this first one, name the property. It's x plus 0 equals x. What is that? Started as x and it ended as x. Its identity did not change, right? So this is the identity property of addition. All right, then look at number 2. So it starts as x plus 37 in parentheses, and then they're going to add a negative 37, but they decide it makes more sense to combine the 37s first and then add the x to it. What is that? Associative. This one, the parentheses did move to something different, right? Commutative and associative seem to be the ones that often get mixed up. Associative of addition means we were adding these two things. Now we're going to start by adding these other two things first, and we're still adding them all, but it's just the order we're adding them in is different. All right, number 3, 1/3 times 1 equals 1/3. What is that? Started as 1/3 and it ended as 1/3. Not inverse, identity. So this one's identity also, but this is identity of multiplication. And then what's number 4, where you add opposites? Negative 12 plus positive 12 equals 0. That's the inverse one. Inverse property of addition. Okay, let's talk through the sets of numbers. So we said everything is a real number, right? Everything we deal with right now will be real. But then under real, we had rational and we had irrational. And then under rational, we had natural, whole, and integer. Okay, so those were all the numbers we talked about. What would the square root of 3 be? Which one? Irrational, right? If I plug the square root of 3 into my calculator, I get what number? 1.732050808, just a number that keeps going, right? That is irrational. Irrationals can't be written as a fraction. They don't have a repeating decimal to them. And they're not a terminating decimal. How about 2.375? Irrational, is that what we said? Not irrational. Rational, right? That's a terminating decimal. A decimal that has an end is a rational number. Okay, and what's negative 11? That's an integer. Can you give me the best number to represent whole numbers? 0, right, is the only one that's different than the natural numbers, which would be, give me a natural number. 1, 16, 3 million, right? The counting numbers. Any questions on how we determine the sets of numbers? Remember, just rational could be a fraction, could be a terminating decimal, or it could be a repeating decimal. So those all fall under rational. Okay, number 8 here, combining like terms. What are your like terms in this expression? So it's a negative 3x squared, right? We want that sign in front with 16x squared, the two that are the same. So your variables have to have the same exponent to be considered like terms. So it's going to be negative 3 plus 16. Do you remember how you order exponents? Highest first or lowest first? The highest first. We want to go in descending order. So this is going to be negative 3 plus 16 would be 13x squared. And then what? Plus or minus? Plus. So plus 5x, and that's as simple as you can go with it. Don't add them if they don't have the same exponents, right? Okay, number 9. We are going to do what first? You're going to distribute, okay? This is what a lot of people did wrong on that first quiz. When you distribute a negative 2, first of all, make sure it's going to both parts. And what's a negative times a negative always going to be? A positive. So this is negative 2j squared. And then what does this become?
Plus negative 2k.
Not plus negative 2k. Plus 2k, right? Negative 2 times negative k is a positive 2k. Okay, so that's that one. Then we distribute a negative 6 over here. So this is going to be a negative or minus 6j squared. And then minus 18k. Okay. Now we combine like terms. So negative 2j squared minus 6j squared becomes what? Negative 8. So negative 2 minus 6 is a negative 8j squared. How about this part?
16.
Plus or minus?
Minus.
Minus. So it's a positive 2 minus 18. 2 minus 18 is a negative 16k. Okay, and then don't combine those, right? We don't want to combine that. Leave it be. Oh, that was going the wrong way. Okay, this one you're going to evaluate. So I'm telling you x is 2, y is 12. Plug that in and try it. I'll help set it up real fast, but you plug it in and try to come up with an answer. See what you get. Remember PEMDAS, right? You can do that. It's not wrong. Just
I did
another
this
step.
time.
What?
I did this one after.
But you took the 12 and multiplied it by both things, right? Instead of just subtracting this first and then multiplying by 12. Yeah. So you could, I mean, if you're following PEMDAS, you would do the 3 minus 2 first, and then it's just 12 times 1. You just end up with smaller numbers and hopefully less going on there. How do we do? What did you get?
16.
You know what? I haven't even worked it out. Okay, so here's what I saw on the quiz a lot, is a lot of people distributed right here, which is fine, but it's where a lot of people made mistakes because there was like a negative out in front or negatives that got left behind. I think the easiest way to do this is to follow PEMDAS. 3 minus 2, parentheses, right? Do that first. It's just 12 times 1 then. Exponent says 2 squared is 4. So 12 plus 4 is going to give you 16. Okay, now if you had distributed 36 minus 24 plus 4 would still get you the same thing. So it's not wrong. It's just bigger numbers, and I feel like a little more room for error, historically speaking anyway. Okay, number 11. So let's lay this out. This is negative 2 times -3 plus 5 times 2 plus 6 times -3 minus 2 times 2. What do you do first?
Distribute. Not
There's nothing to distribute.
multiply.
Multiply, right? So PEMDAS says multiply and divide and then add and subtract. So we're going to multiply, 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 multiply. So this is a positive 6. This is a positive 10. This is a negative 18, so minus 18. And then this is a negative 4. Okay, now when you get to this point, let's say our negatives were in different places. There was a negative out in front or a minus sign right here, and there was a plus back here. Would that change the order you did things in? It shouldn't, right? Once you get to addition and subtraction, you always, always, always go left to right. So just because, like, say it looked like this, 7 minus 3 plus 4. I'll just tell you the most common thing I see done wrong here. People look at this and they say, oh, it's 0. Is that 0? No, because this number right now is not 3 plus 4. It's -3 plus 4, right? That's why if you just make sure you go left to right, you won't make that mistake. So if there's only addition and subtraction left, start at the left and just do the operations as you see them, okay? So in this case, we're going to go left to right. 6 plus 10 is 16, minus 18, minus 4. 16 minus 18 is -2 minus 4, and -2 minus 4 is a -6. Okay, left to right. Oh, one more thing. Here's a big hint for you. What's the difference, okay, if A is -3, what's the difference between this and that? Do you know? How do you treat them differently? If this is saying the opposite of A squared, right? Not in parentheses. What that means is the opposite of A squared, right? Well, this is 9, but we're taking the opposite. So this one equals -9. What does this one equal? That one looks like that, right? So it's the opposite of A, which is -3 made opposite, so a +3, and then you square it. Do you see the difference? If there's a negative with no parentheses around it, don't put parentheses around it. You would square this first and then change the sign, okay? That's the opposite of A squared. This is the opposite of A, and then square it. So if there's parentheses around it, it should always be a positive answer. This one can be a negative answer. Are we clear on that? John?
Wait, so what do we do with the -3 on the end? I don't see that on there.
The -3 on the end of
This
what?
says 2b plus a, and a equals -3, so it would be plus -3.
Oh, did I totally leave one off?
Yeah.
Oh, I did because I circled it. You guys, sorry. You're right. A is -3, and I left it off. So it should be a -9. 2 minus 4 is -2. Oh, not a -9. What did I say? -2 minus 4 is a -6. Minus 3 is a -9. Sorry. Good catch, John. That's what I get for scribbling all over the place. There's a plus A at the end. Next one. Okay. This one says the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is 159. What's the first number going to be? Or how are we going to represent it? Did you just go like this? Yes, it's x, right? Your first number is going to be x. Okay, so what's the next number? If we're talking odd integers, we need to go how many higher to get to the next odd number?
1.
Not 1, because if we're odd, the next odd number is 2 higher, right? So it's x and then x plus 2. So what's the third number?
4.
X plus 4, right? So those would be 3 consecutive odd integers. I know there's even numbers there, which makes it feel a little off. But just remember, odds or evens, okay? Either one of them, these are your setup. Plus 2, plus 4, plus 6, however many you're going to, okay? So you're going to say x plus 2 plus x plus 4 equals the 159. And then simplify. So 3x plus 6 equals 159. We're going to take away that 6. So 3x equals 153. And then divide by 3. So x is 51. What's your answer? The sum of 3 consecutive odd integers. Set up the equation. Find all 3 numbers.
51, 53.
Yeah, 51, 53, 55. Okay. Okay, 13 got done wrong on the quiz a lot, right? What always happens with absolute value? 2, in this case, inequalities, right? So it's going to be x is greater than 2, or what? X is less than negative 2. So you have a negative 2 and a positive 2. Are these open or closed? God bless you. These are open, right? Greater than 2 would go to the right. Less than negative 2 would go to the left, which makes sense. This is greater, right? So it's an or problem. So they go away from each other. All right, 14 is another or problem. Very similar, actually. So this is negative 4. This is positive 2. Those would be open dots and away from each other. Okay. Sorry for the blur factor on these next ones. So it says S equals L, parentheses, 1 minus R, and we're solving for R. What would you do first? Yeah.
Divide by L.
I would divide by L, yeah. So if we divide by L here, then we got to divide by L here. So we have S over L equals 1 minus R. What are you going to do next? If we're trying to isolate the R. Yeah, Roman.
Subtract by 1.
You can subtract 1, okay? So if we subtract 1 on both sides, it's going to be S over L minus 1 equals negative R. How do you solve for R? Roman.
Divide by negative 1.
Divide by negative 1. I would probably, just because it's less confusing in my brain, I would multiply by negative 1 because that'll do the same thing, right? If I multiply by negative 1 here, so times negative 1, that's a positive R. But then I got to multiply this whole side by negative 1. So then what happens is we're just really changing the sign of everything. So you could write it as 1 minus S over L, or you could write it as a negative S over L plus 1. Either of those would be fine. It's just a matter of how you like to see the setup. Okay, questions on that? This one or that one? Oh, by the way, will you make sure when you give your answers that you circle them, like on the quizzes and tests? You don't need to do it in the homework, but quizzes and tests for sure. It's super helpful if I can see where you ended, because some of you like worked down and then came back up over here, and it's hard to know, like, is this their final answer or is this their final answer? So just circle or box for that. Yes.
Would it be wrong if you put negative s plus 1 like on the same like what's it called, numerator or whatever? And then,
Numerator?
Put,
The whole thing over L?
yeah.
Yes, that's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you think about like if I dropped a number in for that, you would get a different value.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you distribute the L first?
No, I
No.
did minus 1 first.
Oh yeah, you can't subtract the 1 because that L has to be multiplied by both those things initially. So that's why we divide by the L to get L out of there, and then you can do the subtraction. Yeah. Okay. 16. So first thing you want to do is distribute this. So 3y plus 9 plus 5y equals 8y plus 4 plus 5. Simplify that. So this is 8y plus 9 equals 8y plus 9. Take away those 8 y's and you get 9 equals 9. What's your answer? Called it an identity, or you could say all real numbers. You can plug anything in and it will work, right? So all real numbers or identity, I'll take either one of those. All right, 17. Simplify this. What do you get for your first step?
Combine my terms.
Yes, what do you get from that?
Negative 7w.
So 5w minus, right? It's not this plus. It's the minus in front of the 12. So 5w minus 12w is a negative 7w plus 8 equals 16 minus 15w. What would you do next? And there's a couple things you could do. What would you do? Subtract. So you move the numbers before the variables. You can do that. I typically do the variables first. And then what's next? Add the 15w, right? So you get 8w equals 8. Divide by 8, and w would be 1. And you can always check it. Go back and plug it in. See that you get equal expressions there. 18's like number 12 on your quiz, right? You have absolute value on one side, but you have an expression on the other. What do you do? Always with absolute value, what do you do? Write 2, right? So 4 minus 3m equals m plus 10. What's the second one? 4 minus 3m equals negative m minus 10. Okay, so simplify those. I would add 3m. So that's 4m plus 10 equals 4. And then I would take away 10. So you get negative 6 equals 4m. And then divide by 4. So m is either, if you reduce that, negative 3/2, or maybe you like decimals better, negative 1.5 would be fine. On the other side, we're going to add 3m. So that's 2m minus 10 equals 4. And then add 10. So 14 equals 2m. Divide by 2. So m is 7. Okay, typically on those are the ones we want to check for extraneous. But if you plug this in, that's going to become positive. So we're going to be okay with that one. And if you plug this in, that's going to become positive. So we'd be okay with that one too. Questions on that? All right, home stretch. Solving inequalities that have absolute value in them. What's your first step? Starts with an I, ends with solate. Isolate, yes. So add 1. Okay, then what? Do I distribute right here? No, don't distribute. We're going to divide by the 2. Do I flip my symbol right here? No. We divided by a positive, right? When do you flip? Multiply or divide by a negative, okay? Okay, so now we've isolated. What do you do next? Write 2, yeah. So W plus 3 is less than 1. And when you write 2 with inequalities, what are the 2 things you have to do? Flip it, and the negative in the place of what was positive, right? So W plus 3, now it's going to be greater than, and it's going to be a negative 1. So take away the 3, W is less than negative 2, and then take away the 3, W is greater than negative 4, and that will be your setup. Can you tell me by looking at this if this is an and or an or problem? It's an and problem. Yeah, if you were to graph it, you have a negative 4 and a negative 2, right? Greater than negative 4 is going to go to the right. Less than negative 2, is going to go to the left. So you would graph that in between. All right, how do you solve 20? Yeah, divide, right? There's no absolute value here, so we're just going to divide. X is less than or equal to negative 3. Or divide by 2. X is greater than 9. Those ones are lovely, huh? Short and sweet and to the point. All right, what do you do with this one? Take away 5. So absolute value of 3z minus 2 is greater than 4. Now what? Right, 2. So 3z minus 2 is greater than 4. And 3z minus 2 is less than a negative 4. So we're going to add 2. 3z is greater than 6. Divide by 3. So z is greater than 2. And then add 2. 3z is less than negative 2. Divide by 3. Got a lot of negative 2/3 and 3/2 things, huh? So it looks like that. And problem or problem? Greater, right? That'd be an or problem. They would be going away from each other. Okay. For some reason, these ones get done wrong a lot. Yes. So one's like 22. There's 2 inequalities happening there, right? You have 2 different inequality symbols. You have a less than and you have a less than or equal to. How do you solve them?
You add 3 on all sides.
You add 3 everywhere. So whatever you do in the middle, you have to do to the outsides as well. So if I'm going to add 3 here, then I'm going to add 3 here, and I'm going to add 3 here. Okay, don't forget about this guy. The front guy always gets left behind. Don't forget about him. He's very important too. So 10 plus 3 is 13. Keep your symbol. This is gone, so we just have a 2x in the middle. And then 5 plus 3 is 8. What do you do next? Divide by 2 everywhere. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. So this is 1. So it's just x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then 13 divided by 2, you can leave that as 13 over 2, or what would that be as a decimal? Right, 6.5. Yes. Okay. Okay, you try this one. The length of a rectangle is 3 inches more than the width. Perimeter is 134. What are the dimensions? See if you can set that up. The length of a rectangle is 3 inches more than the width. How would you write that?
L plus 3.
Not L, more than the width, right? So you would do W plus 3, okay? It says the perimeter is 134. So think about a rectangle. The length is W plus 3. What's the width? Just W, right? We don't know what it is, but we represented it up here with a W. So if this is my setup, then the perimeter formula is double the width plus double the length should equal our perimeter, right? Add up those 4 sides essentially is what we're doing. So this would be 2W plus 2W plus 6 equals 134. So 4W, take away the 6, 4W is 128, and then divide by 4. So the width is going to be 32. That would be inches, right? So what's the length? 35. Add 3 to it. So your dimensions would be 32 inches by 35 inches. Okay, and that's what they're looking for, the dimensions of that rectangle. Any questions on that?